Well,
Okay.
she's not here,
All
but I
right.
don't know about the rest.
Okay. Thank you, Juan David. Well, um, today we're going to talk about the study I asked you to read. This is a study that was conducted in Bogota. Mm, and the professor conducting the study wanted to see the effect of the usage of project-based learning in learners' oral production, right? So this is an interesting study. I hope you have had the time to read it. Because in here we see um, project-based learning implemented, right, in a context that is our public sector in Colombia. So here we can have an idea of how we can use or how we can implement this approach uh, with our students in our context. Okay, so did you read it? Ah,
Yes, yes.
okay. Yeah, that's very, no, that is very bad too. Well, you should read it if you didn't have the chance to do it, because exactly. All right. Anyways, yeah, we're gonna talk about it, the main features of the study, um, the the design of the study, some examples of the projects used by the teachers there, and the findings and the conclusions. Okay. Well, so um, the design of this study was the following. The professor wanted to answer how project-based learning was an influence or was of influence to a group of 9th EFL graders speaking skill development. That was the research question. Uh, so it was an action research. And as I told you, the setting is Bogota here in Colombia. And the study had 30 students who were 9th graders, 19 girls and 18 boys. They were in the age range of 13 to 15 years old, and their level of English was basic. You know? So, well, when they say basic English level, I suppose they did not have an instrument to determine the English level of students, right? So this could be some sort of a drawback. That would be a nice idea to include the English level of students. Anyways, it was not like at the core of the study, so I understand. Well, so the action research consisted of a pedagogical intervention, right? So basically, students developed 3 projects through which they were encouraged to speak English to achieve communicative needs. The projects were related to their personal lives and environment in such a way that they had the opportunity to speak about meaningful information from their own reality. And from a constructivist perspective, the projects aim at generating collaboration, as students were expected first to develop and learn from each other, second, to work at their own pace, and third, to feel responsible for completing projects that involve the classroom, the school, the community in which they lived, and wider real world problems. So we see that during the action research, they developed three projects. Students developed 3 projects, right? And of course, they were related to their context, to their community, and to situations that were meaningful to them. So this is key there. Well, so these are examples of the projects. Actually, these are the projects, right? So the first one was called Discovering Who My Classmates Are, Sharing Common Ideals and Respecting Differences. So this is a project that could be similar to what we were doing with the lesson plan that that you did, right? A kind of similar topic. Okay, but in here, this was like aimed at students working with the intention of achieving an objective and getting an output. So the purpose of the project, as you can read, was to establish friendly relationships among students as they started to recognize their own qualities and personality. Therefore, students prepare an interview to get personal information about one of their classmates' family, personality, lifestyle, goals in life, and ways of seeing life. Okay, so here they created some data collection tools. Well, actually one in this project. And the output was an oral presentation. Okay, so they had some steps to complete the project. We can see them here on the right. So they were given like clear guidelines on what they would do and the steps to follow. So they should pay attention to the teachers giving examples of how to conduct an interview. You see, so there is the phase or the stage where we provide input to students. So information on how to conduct an interview requires also input on the language to be used during an interview. So I suppose there was an introduction of questions, types of questions, and the lexicon or the language needed for them to address and create that interview. Then they created the questions, they rehearsed them orally, they conducted the interview, they wrote a report about the interviewees' answers, and then they presented or they did their presentation, right? So this is a very simple project, which has a really clear objective, right? Which is getting to know each other in the classrooms. That was one example. Here, there's another example that was called Is Everything Fine at School? Making proposals to improve our school problems. So another topic that is indeed relevant in school setting, I think anywhere, but in Colombia of much importance, right? I think this is a situation or a problematic that we have in our schools, right? Like there are lots of problems, situations between students, fights, etc. So that project requested students to do field work on one problem they had at school, right? So they had to reduce the scope, right? Because there are lots of situations and problems. So they were asked to reduce the scope and identify one situation that they thought it was problematic. So for instance, pregnancy in youngsters, drug consumption and sale, failed subjects, violence, robberies, bullying, so on and so forth, all the many problems that we can encounter in our context, okay? So according to the topics, students made a survey and found uh, 10 survey respondents in the school community outside the classroom to collect perceptions, opinions about the problems. Okay. And the output was a survey oral report. Okay. Um, as you can see, these projects were carried out at the minimum scale, right? So, of course, they were related to context, to meaningful situations, but the teacher had, like, the output was like mostly the oral report. So the teacher was not so creative, right? Uh, Many like other things could have been done as a result, as an output, you know. So that is why I'm saying that the projects were kept at the minimum level, because if we think about something that is um, more elaborated as a project that we can conduct with our students of this kind, we can do more things, you know. So if there is the identification of problematic situations and stuff, so the result could be, a campaign on how to address those situations, how to solve problems. But we can think of many different outputs, and that is set from the very beginning, and that is our role as teachers. We should help students, of course, understand the output we are expecting, and we tell them and we provide guidelines. Okay, this is what you need to get by the end of your project, right? So the teacher here was very conservative and kept the projects at the minimum level. And I guess the reason why is like to facilitate the research, the action research and the intervention that was being carried out, so that she could like uh, uh, go through the process of like uh, seeing how students benefited from PBL, right? So in here, they had some steps also for conducting the project. So watching videos related to school problems. So again, I think here the idea, the intention was to provide input, right, to students, of course, in terms of language and in terms of similar situations that could be useful for students to start working on their own ideas, right? Of course, then identifying projects, designing the data collection instrument, which was a survey, then conducting the survey in the school community or with the school community. After that, writing the report about the field work completed, and then giving the 3-minute oral presentation about the survey, right? This also featured a class discussion on school problems, and this is a way for us to foster those communicative skills in our students, right? And of course, this sort of topics are indeed interesting to them because they see that every day. They realize, and they most probably are involved in those problematic situations. So when it comes to the point in which they need to talk about that, well, it is very interesting for them. And if they like feel identified with those problems, they will participate definitely, and they will be engaged. And here is the example of the third project, which was called "Getting Involved in My Neighborhood." Right. So again, you see, meaningful, engaging context in project. Students did field work on employment sources and problems at different places. For instance, gas stations, drugstores, grocery stores, hardware store, internet cafe, so on. In the neighborhood around the school, they prepare an interview with 5 questions maximum, And the purpose was to become more concerned about the needs of a community where the school was located. Again, the outputs was an interview and the oral report. Okay. So they followed some steps. So they had a warm up where they featured a memory game about places in the neighborhood. Again, here providing inputs was the idea, right? Um, then they chose a store in the area to visit. They organized groups to prepare the interview. Then they interviewed people in the neighborhood according to what they chose. Then they wrote the report, and then they gave their final presentation. So again, this is an idea of a project that is worthwhile doing, that is meaningful for students, that makes them start thinking about their communities, and of course, as I said before, maybe uh, the objective could have been a bit more ambitious, right? But for the sake of the implementation of the intervention and the action research, I think that is the reason why. All right, I would like to hear your opinions on these projects, or I would like to see if you have comments. Mhm. You mean very similar in the structure, you know? Mhm. Yeah, you know why? Because of the objective of the research and the research question. Yeah, and also because they wanted to see, or Professor Baca wanted to see what the influence or what the effect of PBL had, or what the effect was on students' oral production skills. You know, yeah, of course we can. Yeah, yeah, of course it is. Yeah, of course it is possible. Actually, yeah, there are some permissions that need to be requested, but I think that that is not a problem. As far as you know the famous person and you can ask the person to come and the person accepts, I, that is not a problem. Actually, that is beneficial to students. You know. course. Yeah, exactly. And everything we can do to help students get more connected with the project, with what they're doing. Oh, that's excellent. We can bring body, we can get them involved with the community. If we can, like we can do many things. Of course, yeah, we need to abide by the regulations and stuff at the school, and follow regulations and ask for permissions and let everybody know what we're doing. But yeah, that is excellent. That is okay. Uh-huh. The first one. Yeah, exactly. I think all of them are relevant, and all of them are engaging, because those are situations that we definitely are going to identify in the context in which we are, And also the last one, this last one is also nice because students know about the problems that they have in the neighborhood, in like giving them the chance to have that contact with people around them, with like the people they see every day but they don't talk to, and understanding those problematic situations. That's what I'm saying, that's why I'm saying that the outputs are really conservative, and they are kept at the minimum level, but more things could be done, as the output of the project. I understand that the projects were kept at this level because of the research. The objective of the research was really specific, and the research question as well. So the teacher had to keep it simple, right? That's the main reason, because if you are doing some research, some action research, and you start doing things like, you have some time when you're planning your research, you have a time span, so you need to follow it. And if you don't control for other variables that can turn out to be having an effect on your research, well, you're going to have problems. So this is why we have the idea this is so controlled, and so like alike, because all of them are like pretty similar. What changes is mainly the topic, and maybe the survey and an interview, the data collection tools, right? Well, so in there you have some ideas as well, in case you want to start working in projects with your students, and if you're working or if you're thinking of working in the near future, well, there are some ideas. Well, what were the methods that Professor Vaca used? Well, she designed 3 instruments that were created or implemented to collect data about the conditions, the language level, and the ways projects influence students' oral production, right? So the data collected was field notes, the transcriptions of students' oral productions during the development of the projects, which presented verbatim oral language in written form, interviews, which helped the researchers obtain relevant information from participants' personal opinions about the experience. All right. So they, well, the first one, yeah, maybe there was a format, there was a specific format for taking the field notes. But that is something that is not so complex. Maybe the transcriptions are a little bit demanding there. And the interviews, right? This is all qualitative data. And when we are to analyze and process qualitative data, well, it's a bit more time consuming, right? Because we need to do a whole process, of course, in quantitative data too, but like we need to be skillful for us to get to analyze these data in a very good way, right? Not to be biased and things like that, right? To make it reliable. Okay, so what about the findings? Well, Professor Baca found that project-based learning incited learners to increase oral production through the learning of vocabulary. Okay. Also, that project-based learning helped students to overcome fears of speaking in L2. You know, that is one of the biggest problems we have in these kinds of populations, right? Students are afraid of speaking. And there are many variables involved, but some of them are that they are afraid of making mistakes because partners can make fun of them, also because they don't feel competent enough to produce language, well, among many other or some other variables we can identify. So here, Professor Vaca found that this approach helps students overcome those fears of speaking or using the L2, right? PBL also raised students' interest in talking about their own experiences and the community, you know. So they were engaged. The projects were engaging, so that is evident in the findings. Now, what about the conclusions? Professor Vaca found that the incorporation of project-based learning in EFL learning incited learners to enhance their communicative competence with a major emphasis on the speaking skill. Despite language limitations, such as grammar mistakes, incorrect pronunciation, poor fluency and accuracy, learners made a great effort to speak English and get involved in conversations so that they could communicate and negotiate meaning. Another salient conclusion is that this research project was through PBL, students gradually, although not that easily and totally, left the spheres of speaking or using the language. So very, very nice conclusion and finding, right? Another conclusion is that strategies that diminish their fears of speaking were code switching, translating, you know, like the main strategies. And as students felt better when they confirmed in the native language that their oral production was right and understood, you know. So by code switching and by using L1, the teacher could help students lose that fear and feel more comfortable at the moment of producing, right? Which again is something, or is one of the major problems that we could have, or that we can have with our students in this, with this, like in this context, you know, with this population. Also, when working with projects, learners became more responsible and autonomous and assumed the roles of investigators and problem solvers because they had to make decisions, negotiate meaning, and reach agreements, that were related to the steps of the projects related. So, as we have discussed before, we can see here evidence that this is a good way to help students develop that learner's autonomy, you know, and that responsibility, assuming some roles, right? So in here, we don't know specifically about how each of the students participated and things like that, but we can think of strategies or micro strategies to make sure that students participate all together, you know. and that there is nobody or no one eh, not participating or being involved in the process of the project, and the tasks that are part of the project. The study also concludes that project-based learning should be implemented in different EFL settings, more specifically in public schools in Colombia, where students have limited hours to practice English and where speaking is the least practiced skill. So, very nice study, interesting conclusions, and an invitation to teachers here in the public sector in Colombia to try to implement project-based learning. You see, and even if we keep it at the most basic level, we can achieve important things. And we saw that the main achievements with this intervention, with this action research, was like students started losing fear to use the language, to communicate, to start producing, which is, I think, one of the biggest difficulties there are in our population. We are conducting a project these days with students from public schools in Bucaramanga, and that is one of the major issues that we have identified. Our students are afraid of speaking, so they may have the knowledge, they may understand everything you tell them, but then at the moment of eliciting production from them, they are shy, they are nervous, they are afraid of making mistakes, and that is something general we observe. And there are reasons for that, and the main reason, I think, I haven't conducted the research, but I think is that students are not normally given opportunities to produce orally in our public sector. And of course, we can think of the reasons why. And one of the main reasons is there are 40 students, 50, 40 something students, and teachers normally ask a couple of students or ask questions, but just a few students can answer. Otherwise, time will not be enough for doing what they have to do. But that is precisely because of the approach that is used. If you have your students work collaboratively, those situations can change, right? Because they will have more chances to use the language at different moments of the classes, not just when you ask one question to them as a teacher. So here in Bucaramanga, we have identified that is a common feature of students. They may have the knowledge, they may have the competence, but they are reluctant to speak out, to use the language, to produce orally, right? That is something we definitely need to change. Our students need to start producing. They need to be using the language, right? And I think I have another hypothesis, and the other hypothesis is because of the teachers' lack of confidence as well. Yeah. Yes, we know what the situation is, the public sector. Of course, we have teachers who are confident, who have the level to be there teaching the language and stuff, but normally teachers are not so confident, so they transmit that to students, right? And they don't give students opportunities for them to lose that fear, of speaking and using the language. And that is observable, that is evident in what we are seeing. Because students like English, they like it, they like learning. And I'm telling you, because of the project we are working on. So our teachers, well, the teachers we have working with those students have the instruction, okay, like you should give students room for them to communicate, for them to use the language orally. This is not just about giving them input and having them do some exercises. No, they need to use the language. They need to start losing that fear, right? We need to help students develop those uh, those skills, or at least to lose the fear to show what they got, what they have learned, to use the language, to communicate, which is like the ultimate objective we have when we are learning a language. Yeah, we can learn the grammar and stuff, but if we have the knowledge and we cannot use the language to communicate, we're doing nothing. So that is something that needs to be um, taken care of. Okay. So that was the study. I don't know, I would like to hear comments, questions you have about this study by Professor Baca. What your comments are about the conclusions, the findings. I will give you some minutes in the breakout rooms for you to discuss in groups of 3 or in pairs about the study, what your opinion is about the findings, the conclusions, about the research in general. And then we come back and share. Okay. Okay, we go. It's high, but 5 to 7 minutes.
Hola, yo estaba desayunando y él preguntando. Yo estaba pensando porque yo creo que todos pensamos unirlo con lo de Zulma. Y Zulma nos pidió un test. ¿En Project Base se puede hacer test?
Sí, es así.
Sí, es que eso es lo que yo entiendo. O sea, ellos como que evalúan, pero no de esa manera, como no con exámenes o cosas así. Ujú. creo que él no lo va a pedir. Creo que en lo de él es como describir cómo lo vamos a hacer, o sea, cómo va a ser el assessment, pero no. Ah, bueno, las conclusiones, las conclusiones. Ah, sí, Mike, yo lo corté.
Tranquila, no, que ¿de qué estamos hablando? Sí, sí, pero, o sea, esa es la razón de haber venido a Breakout Rooms.
Ah, no.
Ah, ok.
Más que en Schoology no está. A mí yo lo busqué por aparte porque ahí no está.
Total. No, ni siquiera es no querer a veces, sino es que no da el tiempo. ¿El ensayo?
Y casi me muero.
Sí, tienen razón. Bueno, pero
Aparte con
así
esa
hablando
señora
un
que estaba
poquito.
loca.
Sí,
Good presentations, es lo único que dice, porque ni pone cuidado. Lo calla uno de una.
pues claro, si no ponen ni cuidado.
La profesora ni pone cuidado, no vio que en un momento hasta se le
Exacto.
prendió el micrófono y se escuchaba por allá que estaba viendo un video.
Qué boleto. Bueno, pero hablando ya ahora sí un poquito del estudio, ¿a ustedes cómo les parece el PBL?
A mí me gustó el tercero. Sí, porque yo siento que así como que es más engaging para ellos porque literal iban al barrio y le preguntaban a las personas. Y ahí decía el profesor como que, bueno, la profesora creo que era, que en un primer momento se les daba la oportunidad de hablar en español y lo aceptaban porque su nivel como que no era tan alto y aparte pues porque las personas con las que iban a hablar, que eran las del barrio, pues no hablaban inglés. Entonces uno era como el que hablaba en español y el otro era como el que le traducía. Entonces decían que lo permitían porque después en el momento de ya compartir y eso pues tenían que hablar en inglés. Y como que ahí, como que sí, como que ellos como que lo intentaban. Bueno, ya fingí, ya me fue.
Ah, ¿qué tal? Sí. Ah, ahorita entró el profe.
Sí, yo pensé que por eso Michael nos había preguntado.
No, no. No, se dio la casualidad.
Menos mal, porque si no, yo quejándome de la profesora. Sí. Aunque este estudio que él nos puso a leer fue aquí en Colombia, fue en Bogotá.
Sí, exactamente. O sea, a mí lo que es PBL y TBLT, que es el de Task Based, a mí me gusta mucho, pero como dice Diego, eh, como que no solo para los estudiantes, sino también para los profes, como que exige bastante, o sea, hay que ponerle bastante empeño. Y muchas veces los estudiantes no quieren hacer eso, aunque al mismo tiempo, pues supongo que sí es más interesante hacerlo en lugar de sencillamente pues estar en una clase más y pues ahí sentado poniendo a escuchar, como que es mejor.
Sí. Ah, no, yo solo iba a decir que sí, que muchas veces es como que en los colegios públicos lo que lo ponen a uno es a escribir. Por ejemplo, a mí me colocaban que si la palabra estaba mal, tenía que repetir 3 veces cada palabra que tenía mal. Entonces siento que como que así, como que los motiva más. Literal, yo me acuerdo todos los errores que yo tenía y yo allá copiando y me da más rabia.
¿Qué?
No.
Ujú.
Sí, sí, cerrame el micrófono. Chao.
Bueno, chau.
Okay, I think everybody's back. All right. Um, let's talk about what you discussed with your classmates. What were the main ideas there? I was listening to some, yeah, okay, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Let me lower my hand. So we were basically saying that one project like this one is kind of better in contrast to some others that we have discussed in terms that uh, although it is demanding, it is like not necessarily easier, but it makes the dynamic more interesting in terms that mm, it has more components. Like, okay, we have this, but then we are going to do this other thing that maybe it is related, but it's kind of different at the same time. So it may be more engaging for students, as Carol said, because we were also discussing that probably using project-based learning all the time maybe mm, can make students kind of lose the interest. So uh, using different activities or projects maybe like the ideal way for project-based learning to continue working inside the classroom or even outside, right?
Yeah, if I understand well, what you're saying is that we should uh, change the type of projects we use with students. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, like using the same structure always could be monotonous, you know? Yeah, that is a reality. But it gives us an advantage as teachers, you know? And the advantage is that you already have the steps clear with your students, right? They already know. And of course, I agree in or I agree with the idea we need to somehow um, change the outputs that we require from them. Because if the output is always, okay, do this and prepare a presentation, um, that is going to be monotonous, you know? So we should think about what artifact or what end product could be required from students in every project, right? So that they can feel they are doing something different. Of course, in every project, there are differences, right? But we should, yeah, we should change and we should try to have our students go through different tasks, right? Silvia?
Yes. Um, I remember when we were talking last Friday about how sometimes, well, these kind of projects require like a lot of creativity from students and teachers, and how sometimes even when you put a lot of effort on creating the project to make students feel interested in it, they are like, oh my God, I need to think, I need to create, I don't want to do it, I feel lazy, I just want to sit here and wait for my teacher to speak, to let me the homework, maybe pay someone to do the homework and do that, because it's not like to generalize, but I have noticed that some teenagers nowadays feel little enthusiastic about few things. So even when you bring up these big projects and you think they will be very into this, it's not like they are going to do it. And not because maybe you feel insecure as a professor or that you are not prepared. Catalina was talking about that, that sometimes people are so enthusiastic, well, referring to teachers, but then you arrive to the classroom and you're like, and you feel like a stopped. Yes, como que, sí, eso, stopped.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and especially we talk about the context in which we live in, you know, and we refer to the public sector. But I understand what you're saying because, yeah, I have seen that and I have experienced that myself with this population. And there are reasons for that, you know. I'm not justifying students being lazy, but what we just need to understand also. In some of the reasons are connected or related to the hard lives some kids have to go through, have to live, you know. Those problematic kids or teenagers who do not want to do anything or who are always fighting and struggling normally have lots of problems at home, you know. And what we do in our system is always punishing them, you know, crashing with them and complaining with them, arguing, telling them off, you know, using authority all the time. And that is a mistake, because what those kids need is a little bit of understanding and love, you know. That is what they don't receive at home. But what the system does is the system is authoritarian, you know, and the system is just like, no, you need to do this because I am the authority and you are bad and you're, you know, but we don't understand what is going on with them, right? That is a huge problem we have. So those cases that we can have, of course, that we will have for sure, we need to address them in a different way, you know, trying to talk to the kids, trying to understand what they're going through in their lives. Maybe nobody listens to them. They don't have a mother or a father who can listen to them, or their family is chaos, in what they have to live is like really difficult, you know? So I don't think that students are lazy because they want to be lazy. I think there are reasons behind. And precisely one of the best features, one of the most important features of PBL is that it is engaging. You know? It's engaging for students. If we are able to come up with ideas that are worthwhile doing, connected to context, to reality, I think we can connect with students on a better way, just than if you give a, you know, a lecture on grammar, because that is what has happened normally. That is the way we were taught. Well, I don't know if you, but I think in general, people in the public sector can say the same about ELT, you know. So if you compare what the odds are, what the possibilities are for you as a teacher, well, you have alternatives that can bring more students, the majority of them, and connect with what they are doing, you know, because that is the result of research. I'm not inventing that, or, you know, like when you engage students with meaningful activities, the learning process is going to be completely different than if you just like talk about grammar or contents, you know. So definitely we have a difficult reality. I understand what you're saying, because that is true. There are lots of problems in our society, and those problems are reflected in students' attitudes. But it's also our duty as teachers to understand, you know, to try to understand what the difficulties are, what the problems are. In you know, for instance, I'm just going to give you an example of a class I observed in the north of Bucaramanga. I was visiting some schools, and I was observing a class that was a first grade class. I agree, if I'm not wrong. And there was a kid, like the teacher was like really, you know, proactive, and it was a really sweet teacher, and she would like have lots of activities for students to do. And wow, she was really creative and like really nice teacher. But there was one kid who was like a pain in the neck. You know, kid was horsing around, was kicking the other classmates, was stealing things from them, would not do anything the teacher would say, would not obey anything. He would even come to me and try to hit me. So the kid was just like something else. So I saw the teacher uh, trying to control the kid, you know, in trying to give him instructions like, no, come, do this, don't do that, please. Okay, why don't you do what you have to do? Please look at this. This is what you should be doing, like your partners. Why don't you try to color this, to do that? The kid was just like not listening. And then at the end of the class, when I was giving feedback to the teacher, I asked her, uh, what is going on with this kid? What is the situation there? Because I saw that you were really patient, and that is, of course, we teachers need to be patient, right? For being a teacher, patience is like one of the most important features we should have. And she told me, no, but the problem or the situation with this kid is that uh, he has been raised in a very difficult and dangerous environment. You know, he lives in a really difficult neighborhood, and his father is a drug dealer, and his father is in jail now. Uh, his mother is not around. She is a drug consumer, and she's doing things in the street, you know, not paying attention to the kid, not giving love to the kid. The kid is living with grandpa, but grandpa is also a drug dealer, and lots of strange people go to his house. You can imagine. So the kid has no attention at home. The kid has no control. The kid has no love at home. So the reaction of the kid is trying to do many things to call attention from other people. And what he has seen is violence around him and danger and people who are under the effect of terrible drugs, you know. So when the teacher was telling me that, I completely understood the situation, you know, because when I was observing the class, I was like, this kid, come on, like, like I was expecting for the teacher to talk to him, like to tell him off or something, you know, but she was really patient. And when she told me about the situation, I was like, oh, everything makes sense. What that kid needs is love, you know, is understanding. He doesn't receive love from anybody. The teacher was trying to show him love, was trying to understand him, was trying to talk to him, was trying to bring him into an activity that would help him learn something new, you know. And she even told me, I have taken this kid to the psychologist and stuff, and he has been going through a process. He has been going through a process, and the problem is that the parents are never there. We talk to them and they don't care. They tell us, you don't need to mess with our kid. We know what we do with our kid. You need to tell us what to do, you know. So they were, wow, it's really, really hard situation. Okay, we have two people who want to speak, Diego and Silvia. Mhm. Yeah. Well, you do everything you can, right? But you can do nothing if people do not want to learn, right? You can, of course, motivate them, and you can like engage them by uh, guiding them through what they should do, and that is one of the assets of project-based learning. Is it should be engaging, because it's meaningful, and when things are meaningful, that is engaging. But I understand your point totally. There are always people who are going to be reluctant, who are going to be just into doing something else. And eh, but again, I don't think that it is just because they don't want to. There are reasons behind, no? And of course, we are not psychologists, and that is not like our main job or duty there. There are people who are specialists, as you said. And so one option is like try to look for help, for professional help in terms of like what students could what we could do to help those students. And also we always have the possibility to talk to them, right? The problem is that we always assume that they are lazy because they are lazy, or that they don't want to learn because they don't want to learn. They want to remain ignorant on or things like that. And they can maybe show that in front of you, but that's not the main reason, right? Yeah. First thing, yeah, talk to them. When you talk to people and you understand, um, there are things that can be done. Of course, you are not a psychologist, but you can look for help. And as you said with this kid I was telling you about, yeah, of course. And the teacher even told me I have talked to the bienestar familiar because that kid shouldn't be living in those conditions. Uh, but that is problematic because the parents threatened the teacher. So, the context is really hard. We have really difficult contexts in our country, which make our job sometimes dangerous. In reality, dangerous, right? For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. Yeah. Yeah, we have some structural problems in our system. Yeah. And there should be possibilities for students to receive real counseling and advice from professionals. That should be a reality. We know, what we have, right? And that is something I agree with. That is something we should require from the government to establish in schools, to send to have those professionals. I remember when I was studying, there was not even a nurse, or somebody who could attend some medical, like, emergency. So yeah, absolutely agree. Sylvia, you were going to say something?
No, Professor.
You raised your hand, no? Or uh who's raising your hands? I think you raised your hand before. So, well, getting back to this, to PBL, yeah, we can think of the benefits that we can bring to our classrooms in terms of engagement, right? Because that is one of the biggest problems we have, especially in the public sector. And despite knowing that we will definitely have those children, those teenagers who are reluctant to participate, who are just lazy, who don't want to do anything, I think we will have the big majority of our students engaged, right? And doing and participating, right? And I think they will benefit mostly from these sorts of approaches, right? In the We can make the choice, and of course there's a combination between approaches we can use, right? And you will realize which one turns out to be more effective, right? The problem with the public sector is the context, that is so, like, sort of problematic, and the number of students per classroom, you know, in the situations that are behind, uh, that makes teachers get used to doing something, and that is what we know, right? Because I have even seen young teachers behaving like really old-fashioned teachers. I remember I observed one teacher in one public school here in Bucaramanga, and she was, I don't know, really young. She is actually, I don't know her age, but she was like, I don't know, 27, 26, a really young teacher, already giving classes in the public sector. And when I observed her class, I was like, the system in Colombia normally shapes the teachers, and that is a shame, because teachers are shaped, are trained in a way in faculties, for doing things in a different way. But then when teachers get to the public sector in Colombia, if they are not resistant enough, they will be shaped by the system. It means they will end up doing what the other old-fashioned teachers are doing or have been doing for many years. And that is what we need to avoid. And I please ask you to avoid. Do not surrender. Because that is what I have seen. Not in many cases, but when I observe that young teacher just doing the same old-fashioned teachers would do. Well, I was kind of sad, because come on, you know what to do better. You can do better. You can do different things with your students. You can, please do not surrender. That is what I'm telling you. Do not just follow what other teachers do. Do not just give handouts to your students and expect them or wait for them to complete them, because that is what teachers do, and mostly because what they see is that there are lots of problems in lots of students, and in controlling those students is hard, and you feel that at some point you cannot control them. But if you look for ways, if you look for ways to turn that around, project-based is one example or one option for you to turn things around and try to engage students in something different, right? Give them some responsibilities as well, assign them some roles, make them think that what they are doing is worthwhile. When you're clear on that, when you have that sensation of doing something that is going to be worthwhile for your community, for your society, for your family, things change a little bit. And even when you don't have 100% of your students engaged, things are going to be different, right? But if you just go to class and give a worksheet to students and tell them, okay, complete the worksheet. This week is going to be present simple. Next week is going to be present continuous, and things like that. Wow. Yeah. Even worse, you won't give students the chance to learn what they should be learning and develop the skills they should be developing. And also, because by using PBL, we can try to do something else. In there, we have different processes that we can help our students develop regarding critical thinking, and other aspects that are relevant. If we like critical pedagogy, there are many things we can do there. And when we involve our students in those processes, I think the results are a bit different. Of course, it's demanding. Of course, it's challenging. But we have two options, doing what old-fashioned teachers have been doing for their whole life, or trying to change, what is done in the public sector, especially. Yes, Diego? Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And actually, that is suggested in the suggested curriculum by the Ministry of Education. So we can look for ways in which we can integrate areas or transversalize, and that is, yeah, it's a very nice opportunity, because there are many things that can be done. We think about the projects that could be carried out, and if we are clear on a structure or a way in which we work with our students, we don't need to be changing all the time. We have some steps clear, and once we start working, students get to know those steps. They get to know what they are to do. They get to understand what the objective is. When that is set there and structured, we don't need to be changing those central steps, or stages in the project all the time. What changes is the topic, right? But as I was telling you before, I think last session, that is something that is created from the beginning of the year. Teachers think about that, okay? And there are some topics that are already there in the curriculum, you know, and the planes de área and the curricular documents in the school. So teachers do not have to come up with crazy ideas. Topics are there. Just think about options for projects, you know? And those ideas are polished every year, you know. So, okay, this project about this topic was successful this year, so I'm going to keep on using it, or I'm going to reform that, or I'm going to change. But definitely, that is a process that teachers go through at the beginning of the year, so they plan everything they are doing, right? And that is connected to, of course, the curriculum and the materials that are going to be used, right? And once the structure is developed, the assessment tools are developed, I think it's smooth, you know, the process becomes smooth for the teacher. It doesn't mean that we're going to do always the same, but if we are clear on what we are using and like the process our students go through, like we can control, you know. And of course, if we are clear on the guidance that we need to provide, right? If we leave students alone, that is what I have observed. Like teachers like giving students what to do, and that's it. That is what happens with the worksheets. You know, teachers create worksheets and give them to students. Okay, do this worksheet, and then nothing else happens. You know. But if we are there, like, guiding students, helping them, you know, if we are able to pay attention to what they are doing in their projects, I think like that is successful. And that is what we are to do in class, you know, like monitor what our students are doing. That's what we are paid for. So I think it's not problematic. All right, people. Next week, we start with wiggle sessions, right? So what we will do is that you will have the sessions open for you to work in your final intervention, and I will be in the rooms to provide advice, to answer questions, to help you with feedback, but you will have the time for you to work on that. Okay, that's what we will start doing next week. All right.
All right.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna stop it for today. We're gonna finish for today. You can take advantage of this time maybe to get together, to talk to your partners in your groups, to define things about your intervention, well, to use the time for you to work on that. Okay. Yes, Catalina?
Professor, I don't know if you remember the last time I wasn't in a group. So I was about to ask you if it's possible to be part of Sylvia's group in the project base there.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah. The problem is if you don't have a group. Yeah. So everybody should be in a group. Yeah, of course you can join her for sure.
Thank you, Professor.
All right. You're welcome. Okay, guys. So thank you very much for attending, participating. We'll see each other next week then. Ivan is not at any group. Why not, Ivan? Come on. Ivan is not in a group. Okay, Kevin neither. Well, you can form a group, Ivan and Kevin. So yeah, you can work together. If somebody else is not in a group, please join them, because by this time you should be in a group already and you should start working, because that is demanding, time consuming. So you will have the space in our sessions, but you should at least get with something already done, so that you can ask me or things like that. I'm not going to tell you like what to do. You start working and I can help you with feedback, right? A maximum 3 people. Okay. Ideally 3, but if the group is composed by 4 people, no problem. Maximum 4. Yeah. So yeah, four tops, right? All right, guys. So have you had a nice weekend and a nice end of semester? I know you are doing many things, so yeah, make use